Well, I think I made mention on the show a few weeks ago. I took the First Serve team down to play some paddle tennis. For those of you that might have gone to the Australian Open back in January, who cover the whole precinct much more vastly than I do, because I'm in a cocoon inside Rod Laver Arena, will have noticed a paddle court set up on Grand Slam Oval. And paddle tennis has really evolved around the world and trying to also make its mark here in Australia. But there's a terrific facility down at the Docklands, not far from the Balti Bridge and Marvel Stadium, where paddle tennis has got certainly a presence here in Melbourne. Matt Levy is heading that up along with his team. He was good enough to host us about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. It's great to have you, Matt, in the studio.
Hey, Brett. Thanks for having me.
It is something that is certainly clearly on the agenda, isn't it? Around the world and through what you've set up here and some other interstate venues, Tennis Australia, also looking to get involved. But for those that maybe haven't quite got their head around it, just give us a little brief introduction, if you like, to paddle tennis and a bit about its history.
Sure, certainly. Yeah, it's a pretty exciting space at the moment, paddle tennis. For those who don't know anything about it or haven't seen it before, if you pictured a tennis court 2/3 the size, fully enclosed with mesh on the sides, glass on the back and the side panels, you'd have a paddle tennis court.
Yep.
Mostly they're synthetic grass courts, all played in doubles format, same as tennis scoring, underarm serve, fast, fun, and yeah, it's a really good spectacle.
Oh, I was pretty sore the next day. It's a good workout.
And hard work.
And anyone who's played squash, who would walk out of a squash court dripping wet from years gone by, it's sort of that combination of both, isn't it? Where you're in that small area, there's a lot going on, and you're using just about every part of your body.
Absolutely, yeah. It's funny you mentioned squash. It is really that explosive, dynamic movement. First 2 or 3 steps are really important. Tennis, you probably got to cover 15 metres or more. But yeah, it is really fast, quick movement.
So just for those who might be driving around or sitting at home who are just trying to understand, okay, you've given us sort of the dimensions. Explain just a couple, sort of the ruling, the rules, a bit of the scoring.
Yeah. So like I said, predominantly paddles played as doubles format. Tennis scoring, underarm serve.
Yep.
Now, the ball can hit the turf once.
Mm.
Now, once it hits the turf, it might then hit the glass. And then you can play the ball off the glass as long as it hasn't hit the turf a second time.
Yep.
So that adds that extra dimension. It's a 360-degree sport rather than tennis. You know, you're looking straight up and down at your net. That's where the squash players come in. They can start to use angles, hit backwards off the walls, let it bounce off the glass, then play. It's really, if tennis is checkers, they say paddle's chess.
Yep, getcha. So how did you get involved in this in terms of constructing your own facility down there at the Docklands?
Yeah, so I'm one of 4 partners, and I've got a tennis background initially when I was a bit younger, and then I moved into building. I had some clients who are in the hospitality space who have one of the directors overseas in Amsterdam, and 2 years ago he first made contact with us and said, hey, there's this sport called paddle tennis. It's exploding over here. We've got to get on board. And so they initially just asked me if I could help out with the idea of designing and engineering the courts. And obviously with my tennis background, it sparked my interest.
Yep.
And I said, hey, I want in here, boys. And so, we formed a partnership.
Okay.
And 2 years later, we're opening up the courts in the Docklands.
Yeah, nice. And your tennis club, Beaumaris?
Yeah, I'm a Beaumaris lawn boy.
Very nice club down there.
Yep. Great people down there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like all tennis clubs right around the country. So before we talk about here, just talk about how big and phenomenal it has become overseas. Now, I know about a couple of weeks ago you sent me a couple of YouTube clips, and the crowd are going absolutely bonkers for this stuff. Just give us some numbers and the feel of it around the world.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we're just starting to hear about paddle here in Australia, but it has been around since 1969 in Mexico. They recently sort of counted the numbers. We're talking 20,000 courts in Spain, 4 million players in Spain alone. So obviously they're the powerhouse of paddle. Then Argentina's got about 10,000 courts, and then scattered across Europe, there's another 10,000 courts now. To give you an idea where we are in Australia, we've got 5 paddle tennis clubs, but it's starting to happen. We're attracting overseas interest. There's a lot of money around for paddle. People know that it's coming as a sport, and so there are the big internationals coming through.
So is this to, say, complement the existing tennis facilities around the world, that here's a club and they've added paddle in, or there's also some, like your facility at the Docklands, there's standalone paddle facilities?
It's interesting you say that. Different countries have adopted different models. Some countries have seen paddle as a competitor,
Yep.
and tennis and paddle don't mix. I think Tennis Australia have taken a really smart approach, and they've combined paddle, also some new formats, pop and pickleball as well, as part of different models of tennis under the banner of Tennis Australia. So TA are the governing body for paddle, and so look, in a perfect world, and a rollout of any sort hasn't happened yet. We're not quite there, but I envisage that tennis clubs could have, say, 4 tennis courts,
Yep.
and they might have an additional 2 that don't have the usage that they once did,
Mm.
and you could get 3 paddle courts on that. So you could definitely have paddle and tennis all at the same club.
So a lot of the people who have come down and used your facility, have you been able to get a feel of the audience? Are these tennis players who are adding paddle to what they would normally do playing at their local club every week, or are you finding there's also sort of a new clientele, if you like, who are going, I don't mind this game. This is smaller. Maybe I don't have to be necessarily as skilled, but one thing I learned, once you start playing, it is a very, very skillful game that you need to be able to play it effectively, understand the whole nuances of the court. But what are you finding out about, excuse me, your clientele?
Yeah, so we launched almost in line with the AO, and we had an instant response. A lot of the initial crew that were coming through were, the Italians, the Spanish, all the Europeans who've already played paddle, and
Yep.
they said, "What took you so long?" So we had a concierge on side who was ready to show people how to play, and they're like, "Don't worry, we've we played for 10 years overseas."
Yep.
But now that we've been established for about 6 months, we've got a core group of very good tennis players. We've got ex-state grade tennis players down there on a Thursday night who are converting to paddle. Slowly but surely, we're starting to build our own brand of paddle, on a Thursday night, and these guys are getting really good.
Absolutely. And I imagine, and we brought our crew down, but if we were coming week in, week out, I could even see just in a couple of hours that we were there, you could see certain people, okay, now I understand what you can and can't do and how to utilise the whole court, and from their mind strategically, we're starting to really think about it, that if you did this every single week, you could get pretty good at it.
Absolutely. It's a really steep learning curve.
Yep.
Maybe the first 3 times you play, you're improving so much. But I think we tend to think of it just as doubles tennis with a bit more volleying, and you think, oh, I'm a good tennis player, I'm going to be good at this. But after you've played 3 or 4 times, you start realising, I can't get away with not using the walls.
Yeah.
I can't try and hit the ball with top spin. It's not going to work. I can't try and hit as hard as I possibly can. That's not going to work. And so the more you play, the more you adopt the nuances.
A little earlier on this Queen's birthday Monday, you can follow us at thefirstserve.com.au, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you like TikTok, YouTube, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and get your dose of tennis 7 days a week. Matt Levy is with me from One Padel, the evolution of Padel Tennis. We're discussing in the studio tonight, of course, a sport that is just huge in numbers across parts of Europe, particularly Spain, Argentina, right across Europe and the UK. Talk of it becoming an Olympic sport by 2028 in Los Angeles. What about the global investment in paddle, just as a sport and a business globally?
Yeah, it's a juggernaut. It's huge. There's big overseas companies that own 100 venues plus. There's definitely been half a dozen or more of these companies out during the Australian Open looking to globally expand into Australia. By the end of this year, I'd say we'll see half a dozen clubs pop up in and around Melbourne, also maybe country Victoria. There's investors who come from a sporting background. We've got Jonas Bjorkman involved, in one of the paddle clubs, and we've also got Andy Murray, who's involved in a company called Game for Paddle.
Indeed, Sir Andy Murray, who did come down to your facility, brother Jamie, who else got Michael Vaughan came down, Adam Gilchrist, Michael Hussey from Cricket fame.
Yep.
How'd they go?
Oh, look, professional sportsmen, like the quick uptake. We were playing with them over the AO period, all the cricketers, And, geez, those boys have just got such good hand-eye,
Yeah.
so competitive.
Yep.
You know, they played 3 or 4 times. Talk about the quick uptake. They were great and great value.
Bit like Ash Barty. Anything she just touches, she can do on
I'd love
a
to see her on
dime.
paddle court. She'd be amazing.
Tennis Australia, their involvement in bringing paddle down under and going forward, what does that look like? Because obviously they're interested. They've got a team who are certainly looking at this and its development here in Australia.
Yeah, look, we've enjoyed a close relationship with TA so far, and obviously we worked in conjunction with them to build the paddle court that sat on GSO, which was a great success. They had 5,000 plus participants try paddle tennis, and we were lucky enough to get quite a few of those come down to the Docklands and try. But in terms of TA's involvement, I think they really can see some expansion, maybe into the clubs locally and hopefully nationally. Callum Beale is heading up that team, and we're also part of a paddle board, let's say, that are meeting to try and share our findings and really come together to find the best approach for paddle moving forward in Australia.
Okay, and there's an upcoming Australian tour where some rankings points will be involved as well. Tell us about the tour.
Yeah, so we've got, I think there's 8 tournaments in total, which are played across the 5 different venues. The one we're most interested in, obviously, is when they come down to the Docklands on the 8th and 9th of October, which will be great. But it's then going to be headed up with the Australian Championships on the Gold Coast, KDV.
Nice facility, KDV. Wouldn't mind getting up there again. Very, very good facility. So the Sydney Open, Perth Cup, Melbourne Classic, as you mentioned, 8th of October, the Australian Championships up on the Gold Coast. So worldwide, we talk about just some of those clips I mentioned earlier of some footage I saw, but how comprehensive is the tour worldwide? And is it the prize money? Obviously, there's professional paddle players who just do this, travelling the globe.
Absolutely, yeah. They're full-time athletes and well-recognised superstars in Europe. There's 2 different tours, actually. It's a bit controversial at the moment, the way it's all working. There's the World Paddle Tour, and then there's the International Federation of Paddle Tour.
Yep.
So it's almost a bit like when there was 2 tours in tennis a long time ago. So the Rebel Tour is coming out with more prize money and up to $250,000 a tournament. Whereas the World Paddle Tour, which was the existing one, has, I think, 24 events on the calendar, and they go across 9 countries. And they're throwing around still 100,000 euros for a win.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's really big money, big stars involved, and great athletes.
Just try not to involve Greg Norman. Just leave him to golf.
Yeah.
Greg, you can't touch paddle around the world. So how do we get in contact? How do people come down and just sample paddle? Because I highly recommend it, folks. If you're particularly here in Melbourne, there are some venues around Australia as well for those listening outside of Melbourne tonight. Great workout. You can bring a few mates down. You don't have to be the top shelf at it. You can develop, and it's a good time, a good social outing as well.
Yeah, look, you touched on it earlier, and I didn't really answer it properly, but there's so many cross-sport players who are coming down to play paddle. Guys who've played a bit of footy or, cricket or something like that, and they want to try something different. Tennis is a long haul to get to the point where you're really proficient. If you've got 4 competitive guys or girls on a paddle court, you're going to have a lot of fun.
Yep.
To get in touch with us, so I think probably the easiest way is just to jump on our Instagram page, which is One Padel _Australia, and then just go to the link in our bio to find the booking. And if you directly message us, just mentioning SEN, we'll give you 50% off the first booking.
Very nice, very nice. You give me ideas, Matt. We've been discussing a few ideas. We might have to try and organise a first serve gathering of our listeners to come down to the Docklands.
That'd be great. We'd hold it down on the weekend or something.
Absolutely, yeah. We could do a show down there, and we could do some great things. It's in a terrific setting, and that area. It's people know where Marv Stadium is, know where the Balti Bridge is. That's a developing area, isn't it? All around the Docklands there.
Yeah, it is. Look, we're right underneath the Balti Bridge, looking back at Marvel Stadium, 206 Lorimer Street. We are.
Yep.
And look, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Development Victoria, because they really supported us. Within getting the site. We've got 4,200 square metres undercover, and they sort of supported our vision in the early days to, just see how this emerging sport was going to go. And it's been a great success, and they've been on board from the start, which has been great.
So we talk about Europe. See, pickleball's taken off in the US. That's been more US based, hasn't it?
That's right.
What's for those who have heard about pickle and paddle? What's the simplistic difference?
Look, I think the easiest way to say it is paddle's completely enclosed.
Yep.
Whereas pickle, you can mistake it for a small tennis court or a Mr. Pee Wee tennis type hot shots style court.
Yep.
Rackets are very similar, and even scoring and all the rest of it. But yeah, paddle's got the enclosure, which makes it more 360-degree sport, and played with harder balls and all the rest.
Now, your son Cooper, who's 15?
He's 17.
17, sorry.
Yep.
I've aged him. I've made him feel a bit younger. He sort of helped host us down there a few weeks ago. Now, I was watching him play. Now, he is down there probably more than anyone as part of your team 5 days a week, so you'd think he'd be out on court picking this up pretty quick, but very talented.
He's going okay. He plays with some of these boys that I was telling you about earlier that are state grade number 1 players, and on a tennis court he'd be wiped, but he's really holding his own. And we were having a conversation the other day and said, you know what, you're playing the most paddle in Melbourne because there's the only one facility and he's playing every day. So there's a guy out there, Jason Gasper, who's one of the partners.
Okay.
And he started off well ahead of Cooper, but now Cooper's just wiping the floor with him.
Yep. He understands the nuances of the tennis court, the paddle court, I should say, and taught us quite a bit. Thanks, Matt. I think we've just we're scratching the surface, but I wanted to get you in after we went down there a few weeks ago, and let's continue to follow this up, and
anytime.
We'll certainly continue to look at it from the first serve point of view and its growth here in Australia over the next, 6 months.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Matt Levy, One Padel. You can check it out, as Matt said. Go to their Instagram page or visit their website, onepadel.com.au. If you directly message One Padel, mention SEN, they'll give you a nice little 50% off your first booking. Go down and have a look if you're in Melbourne, and then let us know on the show how you go.